Thank you so much for tuning in to The Other Side. This is our signature segment, The Other Side, where we have a left-leaning progressive Chicano, myself, Tony Diaz, who speaks with a Republican, conservative, Mexican-American, Jacob Monti. How's it going, Jacob?
Great to be here, Tony.
Now, of course, I disagree with him on 99.999% of items. Now, one important thing about our show is we do want to speak across the aisle to talk about issues that concern our community, because folks from the Latino community are not always asked about these topics, and we don't always get to talk about them. Also, I think at the end of the day, both parties should cater to our communities. So we're going to start off with a really important topic. Does gubernatorial candidate Lupe Valdez have a chance of winning? Of course, you'll be surprised to hear my answer. I think Lupe Valdez, who just won the Democratic primary to be the candidate for governor for her party, does have a chance of winning. Jacob, what are your thoughts? What do you think?
Well, look, I'm happy that a Latina won, that Latinos and Latinas are running at the highest levels in the state. I think that's good. I don't think she's going to win, but let's have the election and let's see.
Well, and that's part of it too. It's like, well, if we really think she's not going to win, we still got to have an election. And I keep hearing folks dismiss her. I'm glad Andrew White, who ran against her, and they had a good campaign. He threw support behind her. But I also think that at one point, when Lupe Valdez was first running for office, you don't think that somewhere along the line someone said, let's see, a Latina lesbian running for sheriff in Dallas. Sure, you're going to win easily. She's always had a tough hill to climb to begin with. And the other thing I want to put out there is that if you run a traditional campaign, you get traditional results. Under that premise, Greg Abbott would win. What I'm trying to say is that Lupe Valdez has got to run a different campaign than we've been expecting, because he's got more money. He's the incumbent. And again, I'm hearing a lot of folks say that she's not even a legitimate candidate. What are the things that Lupe Valdez has to overcome to even make it a solid race against Abbott?
Well, I think she's going to have to announce her position on some important things to Texans and to Latinos, like drilling. You can't be against drilling and be governor of Texas. Right now, you go to Midland. Those are Latinos enjoying that economic revival in Midland. There's so much oil being pumped out of there right now. What's her position on drilling? What's her position on hunting? I mean, I'm not talking about assault rifles, but can we still hunt? Because Latinos, we like to hunt. Let's talk about immigration, because she's a law enforcement person. So she knows about the bad hombres that Donald Trump talks about, that Greg Abbott pursued SB4 to combat. What's her position about bad hombres and the criminal aliens, who I don't have any sympathy for, and I don't think Latinos have sympathy for the hardened criminals that are here preying on the community. But I think she's going to have to articulate those positions.
Well, and you bring up some interesting positions that aren't usually on the radar of Democrats. Drilling, because of course you're going to hear environmentalists talk about fracking, right? Like you mentioned too, you got voters then who are making money at their jobs, and they're going to be thinking, well, are you trying to take our jobs away? I'm going to skip over hunting for a second, although let's make something clear. I'm for 1A and I'm for the second A, and the second A sometimes guarantees my 1A in certain parts of history. But let's get to immigration, because I think that is a topic that most people think Democrats will talk about, but it's not that easy. So she's calling some flack even from Democrats who are asking, well, what was her position when she was actually a sheriff and implementing some of these policies? My personal beef is with SB4. So I want to take it there for now, because you brought up some other good topics that are nuanced, but I ain't her campaign manager. Okay, so we gave you the cliff notes. We're not going to dive into that. I want to talk SB4, because I got a problem with Abbott because he signed SB4, which profiles Latinos. And to me, the worst line of it is that it says campus police officers must comply with orders from immigration officials, which, in my opinion, turns campus police into Border Patrol officials. So that's one big issue I have with Abbott.
Well, look, I was not a proponent of SB4. I was against it. But the hysteria that Univision, talked about nonstop before it went into effect has not materialized. And the only thing I can guess is that the majority of the cops out there are concerned about enforcing the laws and don't want to become immigration cops. That's why we're not hearing about Latinos being questioned for their papers like we saw in Montana the other day.
Now, let's talk about that
Yeah.
first. You're talking about the video. Tell folks about
Oh
that
yeah,
video.
there was a terrible video. These two Latinas were shopping at a gas station. They were speaking Spanish in Montana, and the Border Patrol officer started questioning them, asked them for ID. I was just totally just outraged at that, and I was.
And she says, "Why are you stopping us?" In an accent, in English.
Yeah.
And homeboy says, "Con toda su cara, I stopped you because you're speaking Spanish, and we don't have people speak Spanish out here that much in Montana." I would have said, "In Montaña, I'll get Tony Montana." Okay, that is terrible, right? So, but you're saying.
That's not happening in Texas. Texas has always been different, Tony. That's what makes us better than California and better than Georgia, which, we have all those yahoos that you were teasing me about on the Republican primary running for governor.
You mean the deportation bus?
Yeah, I mean, we don't see that in Texas, thank God.
So what you're saying is that Abbott or the Republican response is going to be that Montana level crazy discrimination is not happening, and you're saying that the fear of the left and progressives of what would happen with SB4 has not come to pass.
Yes, and I particularly know that the governor was concerned about that because I shared with him my concerns about SB4 after it went into effect, and he told me, Jacob, if Latinos, we put in some measures to try to make sure that Latinos would not be profiled, but if it's happening, I want to know about it now, and I want to stop it. So I know he's concerned about it. He has Latinos in his family.
Well, they won't get deported. But let me.
Come on.
all right. Before I dive in, because I'm tempted just to dive in and say that, okay, maybe they're not being reported. Maybe the folks who are being ostracized this way to screen against don't have the resources to call it in. But let's get stuff done. So let's do this. You're saying then, if I'm hearing you right, that Governor Abbott has said he's willing to meet with folks, town halls, forums, and we who are concerned by this, if we can find stories of folks that have been profiled and because of SB4 are suffering, let's bring it to the attention of the officials. So let's do that. And here's my thing, because I really just want to argue about this pointlessly, but by the same token, for the good of our community, let's get to the bottom of it. So one, let's make something clear. I'm against SB4. I want to vote against it. However, right now, let's not talk about that. Let's look at what's happening on the ground. If there are cases of folks being profiled, because it is the Texas Show Me Your Papers law, if it's happening, let's get them, call us, email us, let us know what's happening. Let's have Abbott give town halls, forums, and talk about this issue. What do you think would be some recourses then?
Well, look, I don't think it's happening. I think that the intent of SB4 was to go after the criminal alien. That's what it was always about. It was never about enabling police officers to question Latinos. And again, I don't think it's happening, Tony. We're going to go on our 1-year anniversary of SB4 being in
I will
effect.
not be celebrating. So
Well,
no
I won't be celebrating
no
either.
birthday cake for me.
I won't be celebrating either, but it hasn't led to the hysteria that the left, and in particular Univision, really tried to instill in the Latino community. And I think it's because we have good officers here that don't want to become immigration cops, that want to do their legitimate law enforcement duties, and that's what Texas is about.
Well, and there's about 30 statements in there that I want to jump on, but I want to be constructive. Let's say one thing in Houston, though, with Chief Acevedo, he has made it a clear point to say that his officers are not going to profile folks. I've heard some of his administration on different talk shows in the community at town halls saying as much and telling people that call it in. So here in Houston, because of Chief Acevedo, it's being monitored. That doesn't mean it's perfect. So again, if that's happening, you know, folks, it's happening, let us know. What I worry about is once you leave Houston, you know, you got Vider, you got Hempstead, where a few years back they banned students from speaking Spanish in one of these schools. I worry about what's happening out there. So again, I'm totally against SB4, but I'm willing then to say, Let's get the community to talk about this. It sounds like Abbott would have town halls. Is he willing to meet with Lupe Valdez to debate these issues?
Well,
and talk
look,
about the
I don't know.
outside?
I don't speak for the campaign, but I know what's in his heart. He's pro-Latino. His Latino numbers are going to be even better than they were last time. And we got Johnny Canales. I mean, how can you trump that? We got Johnny Canales. Who do you got?
Let me put it this way. You want to build a wall, Johnny Canales? All right, the Johnny Canales. I don't want to bust his chops too much. So let's do this then. Now, I will say this though. It seems that Abbott may be open to town halls. Lupe Valdez, and again, I want to do this for our community. Both parties should appeal to our community at every level. Lupe Valdez did not debate Andrew White, who was her opponent in the Democratic Party, as much as I feel she should. And I think the right candidate won, right? So she won. I'll say this. If you run a traditional campaign, you'll have traditional results. Lupe Valdez will not win without debating and meeting head-on with Abbott several times. And I mean dozens of times, because Abbott already started having these town halls and discussions about Santa Fe. We need to have these talks about gun control. We need to talk about SB4, what's really happening on the ground. I know folks from the progressive side are going to ask Lupe Valdez, how did you dealing with detainers, retainers, and complying with these unfair immigration laws as a police officer? Because some people are not pleased with that. And by the same token, you mentioned these other issues about hunting, fracking, bringing earthquakes to the backyards of folks so they can make a little more money and buy a nicer car. But that sounds like legitimate issues to have in town halls, which I'd like to say I don't think are on the radar right now. So I feel like if these are in the discussion and Latinos are involved, we can have a really good election cycle.
I just got to bring up one point. I think the hard right sometimes portrays, not you, Tony, but just your group as being in favor of criminal aliens, and you guys aren't. I mean, no one is. I mean, I don't. You tell me. I mean, you guys aren't. If you're a hardened criminal from another country, I mean, no one's shedding any tears for them. I think that's what's so neat about this show is that you'll get the perspective from Latinos on both sides of the spectrum that is not spinned, and I think more people need to make that point, because on Fox News they lump us all together and they say, well, Tony and Jacob are both in favor of criminal aliens running amok, and they don't want to have borders. And I think more progressives need to make that point. So I don't want to give you your talking points, but I mean, I think that that's one area where I think we agree on. But the other side, kind of lumps us all together.
No, I mean, and that is a great point, because we're talking about bad guys. We're talking about criminals, drug dealers, violent offenders that are basically exploiting our own community. Because that's the irony of it all. It's almost as if some criminals make a living off of targeting our community that may be scared to report crimes, our community that may not have bank accounts and deals in cash.
That's probably the only positive thing I'll say about Donald Trump's immigration policy, is that he's the first one to start talking about the MS-13 problem. I'm not going to give him credit on any other part of his immigration platform, but there are some bad guys. But the problem is, everyone's looking for that quick solution. So if they want their immigration position to fit on a bumper sticker, and it can't.
And I'm going to resist diving into Donald Trump's approach to MS-13, which is almost like a commercial for the group, and is not really as profound as it can be. But I will say this, is that at the end of the day, we do want our community to be safe. The irony of it all is that the folks that don't feel like they're part of the system are the very ones who could really help alleviate that crime situation, because they're the ones being victimized. They're the ones that see the crime. And they're the ones that could probably help get those folks. So
that's a good point.
We need a more profound way to approach all this. Other segments, I will tear the whole Trump thing apart. But right now, for the good of the community, we're trying to get this done. So what are your predictions then for the campaign?
Well, look, 2016 proved anyone can win. Elections can go either way. Lupe should not go on a cruise in November. I mean, she can win this thing, but we're going to have to learn what her positions are. And she needs to speak to Latinos and to the other Texans and make her case. I don't think it's going to carry the day. I think Governor Abbott is running like he's behind. He is aggressive. We have over 100 volunteers in places like El Paso, Corpus, the Valley. It's exciting to be part of this campaign. I'm just a volunteer. I'm helping, but I'm proud to support Abbott. Viva Abbott!
And I will say, with the final word, is that Democrats, the Republicans are fired up. They're taking this seriously. You may hear some scuttlebutt that they're not taking lupe seriously. They are. With that in mind, Democrats cannot sleep. Democrats have to work hard. Lupe Valdez, you got to step it up. You got to go out. You got to meet them head on. And you got to prove your case to the people. I think we can agree on this. Latinos are going to report for duty this election cycle and have a big role in this, right?
I agree with that.
Hey, this is Tony and Jacob, and you're crossing over to the other side.